Okay, so this is just going to be a real quick introduction to isometric sketching. The big thing here with isometric sketching is the name. So isometric sketching is a type of three-dimensional sketching. It's used to show an object in kind of a fake three-dimensional view on a flat piece of paper. And the really nice thing about isometric sketching is right in its name. So isometric, probably metric seems pretty obvious what that means. That's measure. And so isometric simply means equal measure. Iso meaning equal and metric meaning measure. And what that tells us is that measure, when we actually sketch something in an isometric view, unlike some other three-dimensional views, which we might talk about a little bit later, because there are some that will take some less time and are less involved. But isometrics have the benefit that when you actually measure the lengths in your item, they come out to be correct. Now, the angles are not going to come out to be correct, but the lengths of the sides will, which is really nice usually to have something like that. So I can go ahead and put in an isometric background here. I believe. Maybe I can't do that anymore. Let me see here. Maybe I'm not able to do that anymore. That's too bad. So anyway, I used to be able to put isometric graph paper on the back of the screen when I was doing this. Apparently that is something that they have taken away. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just do this more on paper here. I did go ahead and put up a link to some isometric graph paper down below this video. If you want to open that up and download it and print it off, that would probably be very helpful. But it certainly can be done on just normal paper. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to that view here. So there you can see my paper. We'll see if we can get it to focus a little bit better. There we go. So when we're drawing isometrics, let's start with something just simple like a square. Probably the first time you ever tried to draw a square and make it look three-dimensional, you probably drew something like this. You started off by drawing a square, you went back a little bit to kind of show some depth, and you had something like that. Now this is called an oblique sketch. Probably the quickest one you could do, but it doesn't have correct measurements, right? If this is supposed to represent a cube, if I actually got out my ruler and measured, it's 2 centimeters wide, but if I go and look this way, it's only like 1 centimeter deep. And so it's not really measuring out as a cube. An isometric will measure out correctly if I can draw it correctly. So an isometric actually starts off kind of like a corner view. You're going to see 3 sides at once, and it's starting off with a front edge, and you go back to the left and up is one side of your shape, and then back to the right and up is the other side of your shape. And then the top gets drawn like this. And so there's my cube drawn in an isometric. Now, if I get out my ruler again and I measure, looks like 1.5 centimeters there. That one's pretty close to 1.5 centimeters. The height's 1.5 centimeters. There is, pretty close, a little bit off, 1.5 centimeters, but all the sides measure the same, which is exactly what I'm looking for on an isometric. Now I see a couple of things here. This is the front of the cube. This is the right side of the cube, and this is the top of the cube. So we're seeing things, 3 sides, top, front, and right. Those are going to be usually the 3 sides that we use. Now, so in an isometric, what you'll notice here is that anytime we draw vertical lines, either up or down, those lines actually are vertical. So if you're looking at something that goes up and down in real life, it's going to go up and down in isometric. Now, though, the place where this kind of gets a little bit trickier is what happens to the left and right dimensions. If we were just drawing a straight on view, left and right would have to be 90 degrees to up and down. But for us in an isometric view, left and right actually go like this. This is our left-hand side. That's our right-hand side. And what we have here is about a 30-degree angle. If you have the paper, it'll be a 30-degree angle, but we're not going to worry too much about it if you're just drawing it by hand. And then in order to go forwards and backwards, so we can have 3 dimensions in this paper, we're going to go this direction. So this is to the front, and this is to the back. And so we've got all 3 different dimensions going both ways, and we can show 3-dimensional objects on 2-dimensional paper. And if any of you have ever seen 3-dimensional graphs in math class, maybe, sometimes they look like this. Sometimes they do them more as an oblique. But that's what we're looking at. And if you can kind of picture this, even though these aren't actually drawn at 90-degree angles on, looking at the paper, you can kind of imagine that in 3 dimensions, they are all 90-degree angles away from each other. So if we go to draw something a little bit more complicated, we just still have to keep those same things in mind. If I wanted to draw something more like a prism or a rectangular shape, I'm still starting with that very front line. That's going to represent this front right corner of my shape. And then usually I'll draw the front first if I can. So maybe this case I'm drawing something a little bit longer than it is wide. So I can draw, that's my front, right? So this is my length dimension, my left to right dimension. Then going this way, I've got my right side view. And then along the top here, I've got my top. What you'll almost never do in an isometric drawing is you'll almost never go this way, right? Because you need to have two different dimensions. You need to have along your front, so left to right, and you'd have your front to back. And so this, you'll almost never draw a line that's horizontal like that. Keep that in mind. If you have the isometric paper, you'll see that there's no lines going this way. They all go like this, or straight up and down, and follow those lines. This can get as complicated as we want it to be, right? If we wanted to start drawing something, more like I don't know. Over the summer, I was trying to design some like end tables, right? And so I was doing those as isometrics, so I could see what they'd look like in 3 dimensions. Little bit of advice here, even if that's not a real line, if I know these 2 legs of my table, for example, have to end up at the exact same place, that can be really helpful too. They can give me a little bit more information about it. So you'll notice here, these are the fronts of those legs, and then I'm going back towards the back of the table. Maybe along my table, I've got a little piece there, and then I come down, and that's not actually part of the table. That's just my ground. I come down, hit the ground, something like that. And again, to show my table leg has more than 1 dimension there, something like that, right? I could give my table a little bit of thickness on top. That'd probably be good. But isometric sketches, right? They're pretty nice just for the fact that when you measure shapes out, they come out right. So on the assignment, go ahead and switch back here. On the assignment, I don't have it linked yet. I need to add that link. I'll go ahead and open it up for you. Taking a long time to load. Let me show you the assignment here. No, assignments. Okay, 1.2.1 is what we're doing today. So if you would have been in class, I would have given you some shapes to sketch, but because we're not, I went ahead and made some solid 3D models with Onshape. And Onshape's the tool that we're going to be using to do our 3D modeling in this class. So if you click on this link, you're going to get the Onshape program to open up here. If you haven't made an account yet, it should be okay. You can still open it up even without an account. And actually, I think it almost looks better this way. So it's going to load up here, and it's going to have a total of 9 shapes that I want you to try to draw. So you can see along the bottom here, there are the 9 different parts you can click on. Part 1 is just a simple cube. We already drew that one, so that's good. Part 2 is, a shape like that. Part 3, and just go through them, and I want you, sketching these as isometrics for each one of them. A couple of things you can do here. You have a rotate button that you can click on and turn it. If you don't want to use the rotate button, the right mouse button, so that one there, that one there, not the normal mouse button. If you hold down that and drag, it'll rotate that as well. So you can kind of turn it around and get whatever view you want. You can also click on this cube and kind of rotate from there too. So you can click on the corners of the cube. Those are isometric views. Kind of play around with those cubes. Now, if you want to measure some of these sides, you can measure these, and that's with this measuring tape right here. If you just click on something that you want to measure, it'll tell you how long it is. So this one's 3.5 inches long. If you click on it again, it'll take that measurement off. And you click on something new. Be careful on these edges. If you click on the middle, you're just clicking on a point. So it tells you the coordinates of the point, not very helpful. If you actually click on the side, when the whole side is, whoa, zoomed in too far, where the whole side is highlighted like that, then it'll tell you the actual dimensions. For this one, I'm just more focused on you getting proportions right. They don't need to be, drawn 100% perfectly to scale, but that's going to help out a lot. You've also got, zooms and things like that too. But you can use your mouse to do this as well. If you hold down the wheel, that is your pan. If you hold down the right mouse, that's your turn. You got the home button there, and then just your normal click does normal clicky things. So the assignment then is here. You need to take each part, numbered across the bottom, and you're going to sketch a quick isometric sketch of it. Looking more for the proportions on that thing, but I do want you to include the dimensions on those parts so you can at least practice using the measuring tool on Onshape. Sorry. I will put a link to some isometric paper right there, and then when you go to turn this in, take a picture of your sketches, add them to your engineering notebook, and go ahead and submit that engineering notebook so I can take a look at them. That'll be your isometric sketching assignment for today. See you later.